Okay, so from here on out, everything we say will be recorded. So if you don't want to be in the recording, just make sure to turn your camera off, and you can also change your name. So welcome to our Applying for Undergrad 101 information session. So this event is put on by OIMS, as most of you know, which is the Ontario Youth Medical Society, a student-led organization that aims to create a difference in the medical field and connect aspiring pre-medical students across Ontario. So for the presenters, I'm one of them. My name is Sona, and I'm the events director. I'm in my second year of university, and I'm studying biological sciences.
I guess I'll go next. So my name's Adam. I'm also in my second year of university in bio.
Okay, and hi, last but not least, my name's Amani. I'm in my second year of medical school at the Royal College of Surgeons in Ireland.
And I'm sure people are really interested about Amani's story as well. So if you have specific questions for her, you could always ask them at the end of her presentation, since we'll have time for that. So first, let's start off with a Mentimeter activity. So all you have to do is go to www.menti.com and then enter the code. So I'll give you all a second to do that. And the code is right at the top of the screen, but I'll put it in the chat too. It's 22864251. Yep, and then I'll put it in the chat. So for anybody that just joined, we're starting our Mentimeter activity right now. All you have to do is go to the website at the top, www.menti.com, and just enter the code. It's in the top right, but I also put it in the chat for anybody that wants to see it. Or I don't think it's sent. Here, I'll send it again. So yeah, just take a minute or two to put some answers in, and it'll build a word collage. Stress, yeah. When I was in high school, I hated talking about university because it was always get me stressed out, and I didn't like thinking about the future either. So I can relate to that. But hopefully learning a little bit more about it makes you feel a little bit less stressed. Studying, yeah, a lot. Expensive, yes, but there's also a lot of scholarships and grants and OSAP and stuff. So you can stick around for Amani's part of the presentation when she'll be talking about that stuff. I think stress is still the biggest one there, but it's not as big as I thought it would be, so that's good. Debt, yeah. Okay, I guess we built a pretty good collage here. Okay, I'll give you guys like another 30 seconds to put whatever else you think comes to your mind when you think of undergrad. I see application, which is good, means you're thinking about it. Preparation, yeah. I am glad to see that procrastination isn't here, because applying for university is not really something you want to procrastinate with. But I guess we can move on to our presentation and get started. Thank you all for participating in the Mentimeter. So we'll start off by talking about what OUAC is. So OUAC is basically the Ontario University's application center. It's just a big centralized process that students use to apply to undergraduate students specifically in Ontario. So basically what happens is you submit all your like basic information in your application, and then all that stuff gets processed along with all the information your school has to give them, like your transcript record and stuff like that. And then that information, after it gets processed, gets transferred to the individual universities that you've selected to apply for. And each university does have its own admission processes and its own admissions decisions. So OUAC isn't an organization that like determines if you get into the university or not, but it's more of like a centralized way to share information with the universities. And at the bottom, we can see like a general sort of like ladder of how to use OUAC. So generally, a lot of times people tell you to research universities first. So you kind of get a sense of like which universities seem a little bit more interesting to you and which ones you might want to like put a little bit more focus on, which ones you think might help you achieve your future goals a little bit better. But I know for a lot of people, the first and second step are switched, as it was with me. So for me, I actually did the second one first. I set up my OUAC account and I had no idea what I was doing until after I got on there and I saw like all the lists of universities and programs. And then from there, I chose which ones I was sort of interested in and researched based off of that. But I guess either way it works if you flip those two switch steps around or not. And then after that, you start applying to specific programs. So after you put in all your like basic information and stuff, there's still like individual components for like specific programs and also specific universities. I know a lot of places have supplementary applications like McMaster Health Science, or like even Waterloo has their own AIF. So that is separate from like the information that you put initially with like your basic information that they ask for at the start. And not a lot of universities ask for supplementary applications. A lot of them do just look at grades, like even U of T Life Science. So it's not as common of a thing. And a lot of people don't know that supplementary applications are a thing until they start applying. But if you are interested in programs, you should definitely find out as soon as possible if they do have a supplementary application system going on, because they all have different deadlines. So you want to get to know when the deadlines are so you can prepare for them. And then after that, you simply just check your emails and await the decisions. So we'll talk about some important dates now. So by now, since it's after the end of November, you should have gotten all the necessary information that you need to apply. So you should have gotten your application access code, your school number, student number, and your temporary PIN. Your school is supposed to give you that stuff. So if you didn't get that stuff or you don't know how to access it for yourself, you should definitely reach out to your guidance department and get that information as soon as possible. But you should be able to access it by now. It might have been sent to you by an email, or you might have gotten like an envelope from school with it, but it should be given to you by your schools. And then after that, the big deadline is January 12th this year, or next year, I should say, for when Ontario high school students are expected to submit their completed applications. So everything on OUAC generally gets submitted there. There is a point there that says like your applications can still be reviewed after this date according to specific dates of each university, but each university does have like different guidelines and specifications, and within that, certain programs have different deadlines too. So you should really look into that stuff ahead of time, especially if you decide that you're going to wait like after January 12th for any of the stuff that you're submitting. But I think a safe way to play this is probably just to submit everything by January 12th for the basic information and your personal information. But then obviously you could wait after for your supplementary applications for when they're released, because a lot of times those don't even get released until after you submit all your initial information. So this is for the first two, that's basically the two dates that you need to know before you press the submit button. And then the last two are still good to have in your head and kind of keep in mind. So May 29th is the last date that you can expect to get a response about your admission decision. So that's like if you got accepted, rejected, deferred, or if you got a conditional offer. If you don't hear back by that date, you might not have gotten like any decision, or not a good one, I guess. But unless you're applying to like a rolling admissions program or like you committed to a wait list. But if you don't get a response by that date, you shouldn't, I guess, like expect one after that. And then after that, June 1st is the earliest date a university can require you to accept an offer. A common misconception is that universities tend to give out more acceptances than they do have seats. And if you don't accept fast, then the seats might fill up by other students. But at least in Ontario, that is not true for most programs, especially if you're applying to ones that are not rolling admissions. So if you get a spot, the offer can't be taken away from you unless you violate some terms in the conditional offer, or you pass the date that you're required to accept it by, but you generally don't have to worry about the amount of students that are accepting those offers from your program. Now we'll talk a little bit more on the application process for OUAC. So as I mentioned before, the first step generally, the recommended first step at least, is to look at which universities you want to apply for. You want to have a general idea of which programs or universities you're interested in, or OUAC could get really overwhelming because there's a lot of information on there from a lot of different programs and different universities. So you want to try to limit the amount of information you want to go through as much as you can. So it is a good idea to at least have a sense of that, even if you don't have specific programs in mind, because those might be a little bit harder to gear in on before you get on there. You should definitely have maybe a certain path that you're focusing on. If you know that you're into research, for example, you might be focused on research specific programs, or if you know you want co-op, you might focus on programs that have co-op, just things like that might help you eliminate the amount of options that are there. And then after that, you create your OUAC. So you create the account with all the information that I mentioned in the previous slide, with the different numbers and access codes that your school is going to give you. And then you just go down the selections, and you pick your universities, you fill out your basic information, and then that stuff gets submitted. One important thing to do is to record your OUAC reference number and put it in a safe place, because that is very hard to get replaced, or if you lose it, it's a process to get it again. So you should definitely put it in a safe place where you can access it. I put it in my notes app on my phone behind a lock, but you could do whatever you think is good for you. And then after that, you log into your 105 application and make sure all the information is correct. This part is really important, because if the information is wrong, there might be problems with your offer or how you're entered into the system, and you don't want that. So you want to find the mistakes and fix them as soon as possible. And you should do that before you press submit too. So now we'll be talking a bit about student experiences. So we have 3 different student experiences here. You can screenshot this and look at the slide in a little bit more detail on your own. And if you have any questions on specific points or need specific elaboration on anything, you can email me. Email in the chat, and I can try to connect you with the students that wrote these responses. But to go over them kind of generally, you can expect to maybe struggle to adjust the new learning models. Everyone says it, but university has a lot more material than high school, and that can obviously get really overwhelming and really stressful, especially if you're starting your first year and maybe a large portion of your high school experience was online. Now you have all this in-person stuff hitting you, and you have labs and different responsibilities, different group meetings, different classes, different class schedules even. All of that could easily get really overwhelming, which is one thing you want to watch out for. So this is also something that people take into consideration when they choose their universities. So they might take the way the school or program teaches this stuff, or how much they care about students' mental health, or different support systems that they have to address that stuff. So that's definitely something you want to consider. And especially for the learning models, I guess some universities focus more on collaborative learning and group experiences, which some people really like. Or you might be somebody that doesn't really like that stuff. So you definitely want to get a sense of how the university delivers that information to you, so you can decide if that's actually the right path for you, because you don't want to get into a position where you choose a university that looks good on the outside, but then after you get there, you really hate your experience. So you definitely want to get a light of the experience before you go there. And in general, there are a lot of opportunities in university. I know it's probably scary to talk about university right now. It might be stressing you out, but I think it's something that you should be very excited for. It is quite literally a bigger and better step in your life. The campuses are bigger and the opportunities are better. There are like a lot of different opportunities in like research, study abroad, different like co-op experiences, different work experiences that you might not have even been exposed to in high school. So there are a lot more ways for you to learn and grow from these experiences, which you might not have been given before. So you should definitely be excited for that. And there are also a lot of like different clubs and activities on campus that might not have been there in high school. I know in high school there might only be like a few clubs that you feel like you need to join, but in university there is a club for probably everything. There's like even like not every club has to be an academically focused club either. There are a lot of clubs that run just for fun. Like I know at my place they even have an anime club. So there is definitely something for everybody here, and you can definitely use that to your advantage to meet new people and connect with others. And for general advice, we have don't be scared to take an unconventional route to medicine. I know this workshop is going to focus a lot on like pre-medical programs, but it's totally possible to go into or like to aspire to go to med school without being in a pre-med program. So you definitely don't have to feel confined by the choices that are here. The stuff that we'll talk about later is more like the common pre-med routes, but if you take a different path, it's your story and it definitely won't hinder you. If anything, it'll make you unique. And another piece of advice is to think of your marks as accomplishments and not standards, so you feel proud of them. And the last piece of advice here that I'll touch on, and one that resonates really well with me, is to stay on top of your workload and get a sense of how your professors teach and how they mark assignments. I think talking to upper years definitely has a lot of use to it. You could definitely get a lot of information from talking to upper years and asking them about their experiences with the classes and even with the schools. If you're considering them, you could always reach out to like alumni from your high school or even check out the specific university's Instagram pages and ask like student councils and stuff there for more unique responses. But I guess that's it for student experiences.
Okay, so we're just going to do a short little activity here. So what I want you to do is kind of react with either thumbs up or thumbs down if you agree or disagree with these questions here. So we'll start with question 1. Does your undergrad program or degree matter when applying for medical school? So that is to say, like, does whatever undergrad program you go to make a big difference when you're doing your med school application?
And if you need help reacting, at the bottom you could see a reaction button, and when you click that, you can see emojis or anything under that you can click. And I think we're seeing more no's than yes right now. I think everybody who's reacted has disagreed.
Yeah. Okay, so I guess the general consensus is no, it doesn't matter. And I would also lean on agreeing towards that consensus. It doesn't really matter too much. Medical school is not going to look at your program and say, oh, you went into the arts, we're not going to accept you because it's not biology. That's not really how it works. As long as you meet all the prerequisites to applying, to be honest, whatever program degree you're from doesn't really matter. But what about your school? Does the school that you go to matter when you're applying for medical school? So I see a couple of reactions. Nobody wants to take the controversial thumbs up point of view.
Nope, everybody is still on the no side.
All right. And yeah, I think I'd also agree with that, that it doesn't really matter too much when applying for medical school. Obviously, different schools, different programs are going to give you different university experiences, different possibilities. Um, and one might be better for you, but in terms of whether, they're gonna look at two different schools and be like, oh, this school is like more prestigious, or this school we're more closely associated with, and prefer that school over another. That doesn't really happen too much. So I'm going to just talk about a few of the common Ontario pre-med universities and programs. So this would be more focusing on the conventional pre-med programs. So very biology, biomedical sciences, health science focused. And like Sona said before, by no means do you need to follow this program to get into medical school. This is just one of the possible options, although probably the most common route. If you are considering medicine, you probably have already looked at these schools. So this might just be an overview for you. And maybe you will take something away from it. So to get started, U of T Life Sciences. So University of Toronto, obviously, a very reputable school in Ontario. Some of the prerequisites for this program are English, biology, chemistry, and calculus. You'll get to see that those are pretty common prerequisites that you should probably have when applying to any of these programs, just because it is very biology and science focused, all of these programs. So they want you to have these prerequisites so you can have some sort of background information coming into first year. So some of the pros of University of Toronto Life Sciences is, yeah, like I said before, University of Toronto, very reputable school. You're going to get a really high quality education here. They have a lot of great professors here. There's also lots of opportunities for research, experiential learning, and networking. Just because the school is so reputable, you do have increased opportunities for doing this kind of stuff, just because they get a lot of funding and have a lot of resources available for you. There's also potential for collaborating with the medical school, because U of T, of course, does have their medical school. So there's a possibility of potentially doing research with them or collaborating with them in some way. Also, a degree here will be useful if you decide you don't want to become a doctor. And what I kind of mean by that is a degree from University of Toronto, although it may not be considered higher quality or give you preference when you're applying to medicine. If you don't apply to medicine, that degree is quote unquote worth more than somewhere else, just because of the reputation behind getting a degree from University of Toronto. Now, obviously, some of the cons are that it has a very competitive atmosphere. Obviously, it's a huge school. There's a lot of kids there. It's very competitive, and the atmosphere can be pretty toxic. And the classes are notoriously difficult and have a very high workload. So if you do decide to come to U of T, you're going to be putting in more work than if you had gone to a different university. And the program is sort of designed to teach you science, not really to get you into medical school. So this program is kind of going to teach you about science. You're going to learn a lot. You're going to learn a lot of interesting things, but it's not necessarily geared toward sculpting a perfect medical school application. But then again, you do get the benefit of all of those pros that I mentioned before. So it's definitely a trade-off that you'll have to consider. Next is Queen's Life Sciences also. You can see the same prerequisites here. So English, functions, calculus, and then 2 of biology, chemistry, or physics. Most likely you guys will take biology, chemistry, or they'll just take whichever two are highest out of those three that you have. Some of the pros of Queen's are that it prepares you well for the MCAT, and the curriculum is most similar to what is taught in medical school. Learning is very medical and healthcare related. So what that means is basically instead of like U of T, where they just kind of teach you science, very research focused, very like scientific knowledge focused. This is more like healthcare focused learning. So you're going to be learning a lot of stuff that is very similar to what they teach you in medical school, or just paralleling what they do teach you there. And that's why it kind of prepares you well for the MCAT. However, it is difficult to get really high grades because the learning is very memorization intensive. Obviously, if they're going to be teaching you stuff that is paralleling what you will learn in med school and the MCAT, it's going to be quite difficult and a lot of memorization, just due to the nature of the information they're teaching you. And the first 2 years can be quite challenging with lots of required courses. But I'd say if you are interested in healthcare and learning about all of that kind of stuff early on, I would consider Queen's just because of the nature of what they teach you. And they also have a medical school there too. So, all right, next is McMaster Health Science. So this might be the most popular pre-med program in Ontario. Prerequisites are English, biology, chemistry, 1 math, and then 1 math, non-science, non-tech course. So this basically means 1 social science, business, or arts course, or something else that's not math, not science, and not tech. So just make sure that you have at least 1 course like that, aside from your other English course, if you want to apply here. And the reason why this is considered the most popular, best pre-med program in Ontario is because they have a really high acceptance rate into medical school. So about 60% of the graduates from this program get accepted into medical school. The reason for that is the students in this program get a lot of special consideration and a lot of resources dedicated just towards them. And this program is specifically designed to get you into medical school. It's very commonly accepted that, this program is made just to build your application and get you accepted. The drawbacks, of course, extremely hard to get into. There's about a 5% acceptance rate. To give you some context, it's just about, if not more difficult to get into than Harvard. So don't let that discourage you, but just know that if you don't get in, it's not for a lack of trying. And every student in this program will be aiming to go to medical school. There isn't much room to switch paths. Of course, you can switch paths, but the reason that there's a 60% acceptance rate into medical school is because pretty much every student in this program is applying to medical school. That's a given. And they do a different learning and teaching style. So McMaster tends to teach based on case studies, experiential learning, very hands-on learning, a lot of group activities. So if you're not a fan of that, you might not like McMaster so much. All right, Western is next. Western requires English, biology, chemistry, calculus, and physics is recommended. And the program I've chosen here is medical science, which is probably the second most popular choice as a pre-med program in Ontario. They have very interesting medical related courses in 3rd and 4th year. And this program is also kind of designed to get you into medical school, not so much as health science, but compared to other programs that we have, this is probably like behind health science, the next one that kind of has a lot of healthcare based programs. And in general, the quality of education here is pretty high. Oh, I see a question in the chat. When it says recommended physics, that means if you don't take it, you're at a disadvantage. No, what it means is that some of the, well, probably what it means is like some of the first year courses that you will be required to take might have information in it that was taught in high school physics. And if you don't have that physics, then you're going to need to learn that information as if it was brand new compared to some of your peers, which might not have that information. Like obviously they're going to teach it to you since it's not required. They can't just expect you to know it, but the learning may be a little bit more fast paced for you at the start compared to a review, just because you don't have that prior knowledge. Yeah, so it's not a prerequisite. You don't need it to apply. Yeah, and then I'll just continue by talking about scholars electives. So this is a program at Western you can apply to. It is pretty competitive to get in, but if you do get in, it gives you a lot of exposure to research, experiential learning. I believe, no, I don't think it gives you scholarship money, but it might. I have to double check. But if you are applying to Western, I would consider applying to the Scholars Electives program. It's another thing you can put on a med school application, and it definitely gives you exposure. Is there a supplementary application for this program? For medical science, there is not. For the Scholars Electives program, there is quite a lengthy supplementary application for Scholars Electives, having done it myself. It is pretty long, but I think it's worth doing if you're going to apply to Western. Might as well, because if you get in, it's a great opportunity. Oh, and yes, I probably should have mentioned that McMaster Health Science also has a supplementary application that they heavily consider when they're doing admissions. What kind of questions are on there? The Scholars Electives supplementary. Yeah, questions about experience. Yeah, I'll let Sona answer the chat, and I'll continue talking about some of the cons of medical sciences. So this program is also pretty difficult to get into. You need at least a 90% average to apply. However, they only really consider your grades. So if you do have above a 90%, it's not guaranteed you'll get in, but it's highly likely that you will. And the difficulty of the classes here is also a little bit elevated. You're going to be learning a lot of content, a lot of material. But then again, you're also going to be getting that higher quality education. Moving on. Okay, I'll just answer this one question. So will getting into that program mean that I get an advantage when being considered for a program at Western? If you get into the Scholars Electives program, you will get into whatever program you applied to at Western. Yeah, you have to be admitted to Western to get, yeah. But basically that program is pretty competitive. I think they only have about 250 seats across the entire faculty. So if you get into that, you'll definitely be able to get into whatever program you want. So moving on to Ottawa, health sciences, prerequisites here, English or French. So that's one thing. Biology, chemistry, and then one of math or physics. Pros here is obviously French immersion. So if you speak French and you're fluent in it, this might be the choice for you. And it's also less science intensive. So if you're not too much into science, but you still want to stick to a sort of traditional pre-med route, this might be an option for you. There's a lot more social science and RC courses that are required in this program compared to just like the pure biology, chemistry, biochemistry stuff. However, some of the cons are that it doesn't contain all of the prerequisites you need for medical school. So you kind of have to work around that and take those prerequisites as electives. So it's not a barrier at all, just something that you have to consider when taking this program. And then also third and fourth year courses are very paper and writing based. So there's a lot of writing that you have to do. And if you're not a very strong writer, then your grades might suffer because of that. Okay. And the last one I put here is the University of Windsor. The reason this is here is because I go to the University of Windsor and so does Sona, and we're both here going through the pre-med route. So although this isn't really a common or even popular university to apply to, it's here just because I have personal experience going to this school. So if you have any questions, definitely you can ask me and I'll be able to answer them. So I've chosen the biomedical science program here, but it's basically the same thing as biology. Prerequisites to apply: English, biology, chemistry, functions, and then calculus and physics are both recommended. They're recommended again because if you go to this program, you have to take calculus and physics in first year. So if you didn't take them in high school, it's just going to make it more difficult for you, but it does not put you at a disadvantage at all in terms of getting accepted. Pros of going to this school are the courses are much easier comparatively to other universities. There's a lot less competition for research and leadership opportunities here. There's less workload. So you have more time to focus on other things. And I think this is generally true of any other smaller universities in Ontario. Typically, like lower reputable, like less reputable, lower scoring universities that are a lot smaller generally have a lot less competition compared to a bigger school like U of T. So there is more access to resources if you can find them. But then that brings us to the con where it is difficult to actually find these resources because some of them just don't exist. There's not as much funding, there's not as much professors, there's not as much students, there's less options for you here, although it is easier to get whatever options they have. So I guess that's kind of the trade-off that you have to consider. Yes, Sona.
I just wanted to add that the biggest reason why we did choose this university was because we chose to live at home to save a lot of money. I know based on the Mentimeter that we did earlier today, there was a lot of conversation about like debt and how expensive it was. But Adam and I do go here for almost free. Our tuition is almost fully covered. That's partly because the university is cheaper than a place like Toronto, but also because there are a lot of scholarships here. And it's slightly easier to get these scholarships just because there's not as much competition compared to a place like Toronto. So if you're looking to save money, staying at home and maybe going to a smaller university is definitely a consideration that you should take. And the lower quality education is also something that you should take with a grain of salt. Because again, this is something that is like assumed by the general public, or like the stigma around like going to university that's not like branded as like one of the top 10 like in the country or something like that. But there's still a lot of opportunities to consider and a lot of other things to consider as well. So you should definitely think about how you're going to do in this university and how these opportunities can like help you specifically, because for a place like Windsor that's a little bit smaller, if you're willing to look for the opportunities, the chance of you getting them is definitely higher than other places, like Adam said. So it might be like very hard for people in Toronto to get into research because just of the level of competition. So it's like, especially now compared to the friends that I have in Toronto, it's kind of ironic that for us at least, I probably have around like 300 research hours already. And I started researching a few months after I started university. So from that alone, I guess there's definitely a lot of things to consider aside from like the glory of moving away and getting all the distant experiences.
Yeah, I'd say it's really a big personal decision what undergrad program and what school you choose. You obviously have to weigh in moving away versus staying at home. You might have resources already set up for you at home. I mean, it's kind of just a personal thing that you have to choose for yourself, whether you want to move away and get that independence, 'cause that could also benefit you, or whether you like to stay home and make use of what you already have, whatever networking and stuff you've built up for yourself. So yeah, continue. And if you have any questions, you can put them in the chat. Can continue to answer them.
All right. Hi, guys. I'll be running through, now that we have how to apply and the schools that you're applying to, I'm going to run through how to fund our school. So we're going to briefly do a little quick activity, which are misconceptions. So yeah, go ahead. The first one is my parents earn too much, so I'm not eligible. So we're going to do the same thing as Adam. Kind of rate yes or no based on the little misconception. So if you agree with this, meaning that like you think that because like it depends on your parents, income, select yes, and no for if you don't agree. Okay, so I see some no's and yeses. All right. Okay, so it does depend, of course, on your parents' income, but it's also based on whether or not you live at home or you live out of town. It takes into a lot of consideration other things as well, because we understand that, or they understand that, we are students, we want to, broaden our opportunities. So they take that into account as well. So their example they put on their site was an example of Jess. So her parents make $110,000 a year, but she is going to a different city for university. So she's going out of her hometown, so she won't be living at home. And with that information and that income of her parents, she was still getting $2,100 in grants, which she won't have to pay back, and $7,100 in loans that she will have to pay back at the end of her 4 years. So it's not bad. She is eligible for something. All right, the second misconception is that scholarships are only for A students. Okay, I'm seeing a no, no. Okay, good. So I'm seeing no's. You are correct. So what this means that scholarships are only for like high flying students that get like an A average. So the answer is, yeah, no, it's not all scholarships are academic based. They are based on your skill set, your aspirations, your passions, as well as grades as well. But not all scholarships are academically constricted. The third one is there's too much competition for scholarships. So yes or no, what do you think? Okay, I'm seeing some no's, good. Okay, so this is a very common one. I think even when I was applying for university, I thought I was like, there's no way I'm going to get a scholarship because there's too many people applying. I'm only like one person in 10,000 people. But the truth is that a lot of people aren't aware that they can apply to begin with. And a lot of people don't even have the time or even thought to think about applying for scholarships. So, I mean, there is competition, but not as much as you think there is. And the very last one, a misconception, is I have to write an essay to apply for a scholarship. Yes or no? All right. Okay. So I'm seeing no's as well. Perfect. You guys are great. No, not all scholarships require an essay. Again, going back to the second point I made, some are academics. So some just look at your academics. And these are the ones you don't have to write essays for, but the ones that involve like, your hopes and aspirations, those ones would want to hear a little bit more about who they're giving the scholarship to. And that's a given. Okay. All right. Next slide. Thank you for participating, guys. All right, so I'm going to be running through the nitty-gritties of OSAP. So first, like what OSAP is, different scholarships offered through different universities that we mentioned earlier. this is a good one. This is a good one. Entrance grants through universities. A lot of people, like even when I applied, I wasn't familiar with this whole system, but this is definitely a good slide to look out for. And last but not least, scholarships offered through other platforms, meaning private platforms, not through school specifically. All right, next slide, please. Alrighty, okay, so what is OSAP? The acronym OSAP stands for Ontario Students Assistance Program. So just going off the definitions of grants and loans, they offer both grants and loans, firstly, for full-time and part-time students. But a grant is something you don't have to pay back. So it's basically like they're gifting you this money. It's like a gift card type, but a larger gift card. And that's yours to keep for tuition, mostly, or it could be for books or expenses. And loans, on the other hand, I'm just gonna run through like I'm not sure if you're familiar with like what loans are and what they mean, but basically it's money, given to you temporarily. However, you don't have to pay it back until the end of your studies. So let's say most of these programs are 4 years or 5 years, depending, but mostly 4 years. You'll have to pay back your tuition at the end of those 4 years. And if you continue past that, at the end of those years, and so on and so forth. That's a good thing. Again, and for full-time and part-time students. So they do help to fund one's tuition. That's the big chunk of it. And most people just think it's for tuition, but they also take into account, your books, your school supplies, and your living expenses if you're living outside of home. So yes, thank you. Go ahead. Yeah, next slide. All right. Okay. So how to apply? I won't pull up the OSAP account yet because I don't have an account. I'm way too old for that. But it's very similar to the OUAC account. So it actually is, in fact, linked to your OUAC account. So you do have to enter again your SIN number just to confirm your identity, but it will be linked to your OUAC account. So it has that kind of like it'll mostly fill in the information for you. And then beginning your application, you're going to be providing things about your program, whether it's like full-time or part-time, what school and program you're in. Let's say like you're in Western Med-Sci, you'd put that in. And if you're living in accommodation, meaning you're at home or you're not. And yeah. And the third thing, you're doing your parents' personal information. For example, their SIN number as well as their tax details, such as their income. And then your tax information as well. So I know not all of you be working at this point, but you still have to fill out a tax form. So I'm assuming your income is relatively low, so this doesn't really matter. It's just something that they can kind of grasp because, for example, postgrads apply and et cetera, et cetera. And then they also may ask you about estimates of government funding or income support provided to you. This is something you can ask your parents about, but most likely you won't be kind of getting into those nitty-gritties, but this is just like, and also like other scholarships and awards you've been offered like privately, and yeah. And things not to include, because there's a whole list of things to include and not, because I know like tax and income can be something very daunting. And like I'm 21, I still consider myself young, and I'm like, I still don't know everything about expenses and, bank statements and loans. And it's very confusing. It's a very confusing business. So it's understandable that you won't know, but OSAP is a very, very good platform. The website itself has a lot of different, like they have like FAQs and stuff, and there's a list of what to include and what not to include. And the best thing that I found was there is a mock OSAP estimate, because you won't be doing it right now, your OSAP application. You can, you guys are high flyers, you can, but you have this mock OSAP link, which is basically the exact copy and replica of the actual OSAP application. And I'll put that in the link at the end, but that gives you an idea, like a rough idea of how much you'll be getting just based on the things I listed before. So yeah, next slide. All right, okay, so we're just gonna go through, I know Adam listed a couple of popular schools, so I'm just gonna dive into a couple of them. So this is some scholarships offered at Queen's. I did go to Queen's for a year, so if you have any questions for me in terms of Queen's, I'll drop my email at the end as well, so you can ask me about those. But these are a list of scholarships. They have quite a few. And the value varies per scholarship, but I know they range from about like lowest to like 1,000 and highest to about 5. And they can also, a lot of scholarships can be renewed year to year. Not all of them listed here, but some of them can be. That's something to look forward to. Eligibility, it's the student with great academic standing. That's a given. They want someone that's, performing well. And a criteria, they're mostly automatic, but some of them do require supplementals. Next slide. Thank you. Okay, so the second one is McMaster. So there's about 4 I listed here, and they all have around the same value, which is 5,000. 28 awards available means that they are like renewable. Eligibility is a student studying currently at a high school entering level 1 of their first bachelor degree programs. That's all of you guys. And the criteria, this one goes into more like personal and personality. So it's wanting a short essay describing accomplishments and things you're most proud of, and reference letters. Reference letters are important. I would suggest, if you haven't already got them for your applications or just future reference, like make good relationships and whatnot with your teachers or your guidance counselors, because those will come into handy later when you're applying to bigger and brighter things. Even when you're applying to med school, like way down when, if you end up doing that path, it's good to have a reference letter from someone, even in high school, even though it seemed like a long time ago. It always helps to have someone you're in touch with from your schools. And deadline there is February 17th. So you guys still have time. All right, so University of Ottawa, this is a science undergraduate research scholarship. This was a very large and hefty value, so it's at 11,500. But it is, again, a little competitive just because it's in the Faculty of Science, first of all, but the admission average has to be a 92 or above. And the criteria is that they demonstrate research skills. If you're already doing, research in like observerships with like your local like hospital or like healthcare professionals, that's great. If you're involved in any extracurriculars, whether in school or outside of school, again, letter of recommendation comes up. Very important, I told you guys. And just a little bit about you, describing their passions for scientists and etc. And then there are interviews for this one because, again, of like the large nature of the scholarship and the value of it. But yes, that's the deadline is March 15th. Again, lots of time. All right. Okay, the last one is Windsor. So Adam and Sona might be familiar with this one, but this is the Bill Answer Award. It is, again, a big portion. It's 10,000, but it's split between your whole school, like your whole undergraduate journey. So it'll be per semester, you'll get $1,250. Eligibility is a full-time student entering an undergraduate program with an admission average of 80%. And in your undergraduate program, you have to maintain an average of 73%. So that's not bad. It's very doable, very possible for all of you right now applying to a medical program or medical like curriculum. I would say most of you are probably around the range of an 80. This is great. They will need a transcript of your grades from high school and through university as well. Again, letters of reference are coming now, but this time they need one from a teacher, so in high school, or one from, and one from a member of the community. That could be someone like that you volunteer with, like a dance teacher, someone that has seen your skills and can be demonstrated across like your activity. So I use my public speaking teacher, for example. She was great, and then I use my high school teacher for another one. Again, deadline is late, February 17th, lots of time. All right, this is the slide that I was talking about earlier. It's entrance grants. These are based on, basically it's like, again, free money that's given to you based on what you're coming into the school with, what mark coming into the school with. So U of T, the main campus is not listed because I think Adam mentioned before, it's a very competitive university, and they don't often share too much information about like averages and admissions but just think high, basically it's very high. But going into UTM and University of Toronto Scarborough, they give about 2,000 to 12,000 depending on what you're getting average per year. So just entering with a 90 to 92%, you're getting 2,000, a 92 to a 94 95 about is 3,000. And then if you're doing a 95% plus throughout your years, you get 3,000 a year, which is really good. All right, so Queens, students in the top 5% of their program get 7,000. And there are grants given to those higher than average, but the average isn't listed obviously because not everyone has applied. But for example, in my year when I applied in 2018, a long time ago, they gave, I believe, 2,000 to those that were a 90 and over. That's just like a little thing to put in the back of your minds. I would say it shouldn't have gone too much more up than that, maybe like a 92 for now. But we're still honoring like around 2,000 and 92%. That's what my estimate is, at least. McMaster, so students in the top 10% of their faculty are 3,000, and then who get a 94% and above are at 1,000 just flat. Western 90 to 92, 15. I know there's a lot of numbers I'm throwing at you, but it helps to know that like this is what you can get if you do apply to these schools. So 92 to 100% is 2,500. And the top high school admission average is 6,000. And then University of Ottawa, 95 to 100 is 3,000. Going down 90 to 94, 95 is 2,000. 85 to about 90 is 1,000. And then going back to Windsor is 85 to about 90, 1,000. And these two are renewable. So 90 to 95 is 10,000, so 1,250 a term, which is great. And then 95 to 100 is 16,000, which is 2,000 a term. I hope that made sense to everybody. I know it's, again, a lot of numbers, but yes. Go ahead, next slide, please. All right, okay, so these are just foundations on the side that offer scholarships, so not through schools. You may be familiar with some of them. I know Terry Fox is one that really, strikes a lot of people's attention. So this is based on good academic standing who pursue humanitarian efforts. It could be something like helping out in a doctor's clinic if it's related to healthcare, but it's open to everybody. It's not just open to students applying in the science field. It's open to everybody. So any humanitarian action would be good. And this is, again, it's for your full 4 years. So it's 3,500 per semester and total 28,000, which is amazing. It is a bit of, these are a little more competitive because a lot of them are open to just like everybody. So it is on the competitive side, but again, by all means, if you do have the time, please apply. The second one is a Luke Santee Memorial Award. It's 80% or above with a passion for physics. So I'm hoping you guys, some of you have a passion for physics. This was more science involved one. Of course, community involvement and letters of recommendation, the value is 1,000, just flat 1,000. The third one is the Orville Erickson Memorial Scholarship. So basically you have to be in a Canadian institution, which you guys, I'm assuming, are, and prefer to have a passion for the wildlife and the environment. So like something like ecology or like veterinary sciences even could be involved. But the value can range from 500 to 4,000, just depending on your expertise and again, your application. The last one is Bernard and Associates Scholarship. So this is just a grade 12 student in financial need with qualities of hard work and dedication, which a value of 2,500. This is just based on, not like, it's just based on, financial need, potentially based on like, your, again, passions and the require a statement from you, but it's not based on academics. It's just based on your need. And yeah, I guess that sums our presentation up. I guess this leaves the floor for questions. And Adam and Sona will hop on here as well.
Yeah, feel free to unmute or put your question in the chat. We're going to be sending out the link to access these slides afterwards, and you should be able to view all of our references in the notes section so you can see where we got the information from. If you want to read up more about a certain topic, definitely you can click on those links and there is more information available for you there. And if you missed a portion or want to rewatch something, you can, I think we will be, this this presentation was recorded, so we'll be posting the recording somewhere for you guys to be able to view it.
And then we have a question about OSAP in the chat. I think for us, when we did it, we followed the general deadline by like June 30th or something, I think it was. We didn't look at it until after we accepted our offers. I don't think that's like a common thing for people to look at before, just because you need to know which university you're committing to for you to apply to OSAP. So after you commit to a university, you kind of look at OSAP, you fill out the information, and you submit all your paperwork like Amani talked about, and then you just have to get everything in by the deadlines that they mention online and through the OSAP website. Do you have anything else to add to that, Amani?
No, that's it. I did see on the website though that they mentioned you can still apply. Let's say you are pursuing your first year and you didn't think you could apply for OSAP and you end up applying late. You can still apply until 60 days before the end of your last term date. So meaning if you're applying for the first year, you can apply let's say your last day is April 30th. 2 months before that is your last day to apply for OSAP. So February, I would say aim to apply if you didn't apply already or in a couple months by February 1st.
Yeah.
On or around.
And make sure you look at your university tuition deadlines and stuff like that too. Like if you're not gonna get approved by OSAP or get the money by then, it might be an issue. But usually the numbers that OSAP gives on the OSAP calculator tend to be fairly accurate. I found for myself and my friends as well, it was pretty accurate, pretty close to it. Maybe a few hundred off, but it was decently close. And then I guess Amani can talk about the calculator.
Yeah, I was just putting it in. And I'm going to mention one more thing. I think this kind of applies to me. What someone mentioned in the Google form about post-grad schools and about applying out of province. This estimate also applies there, but just know that if you are applying for medical school, just in the future, if you're thinking about that now, the amount you're getting from OSAP is not as much. I did a little generation based on let's say if my parents were earning minimum wage, and I still got about maybe 2/5 of my final tuition in medical school, which was, I put Queens, for example, and it ended up being about 30 something. And I think I got 12, something like that. So just keep that in mind. And for postgrad outside of Ontario, just know that if you're not going to go through OSAP, there are banks that offer low interest for students. They do understand that OSAP is not perfect for postgrads. It has a little, a couple of little loopholes you can find, but there's not too many. So for me, for example, I study internationally. So I looked at a lot of banks and other things that offer low interest. I know Scotia is a great one. That's for future, but just a heads up, because you guys mentioned it in the Google form. IELTS test. I'm not sure about where or how you can do it, but I mean, there might be resources through your high school. I'm not sure about this one. Donna or Adam, do you know about IELTS?
I don't think I ever heard about them. Do you know what the acronym stands for, or if it's for a specific school or anything? Oh, it's the English one.
It's the English literacy test for I think it's for people from outside.
Oh, okay.
I know it's for my school. I remember seeing it some places. I'm pretty sure that's the one.
Okay, I don't think I know anything about that one. The only English sort of thing that I know for us was the Ontario literacy test, but I haven't heard about that one. But I'm sure if you ask guidance or anything like that, they'll probably have a lot of information about that.
Or you might have to do it not outside of Ontario, but online, because I don't think Ontario, they mostly have CTBS and EQAO, and I don't remember those, it's so long ago, but those ones. So we may have to seek things abroad. UCAT score. No, so it depends from what year you're applying to. But like I applied with 1 year of undergrad, so they didn't look at my UCAT score. But let's say you're applying with a full undergraduate program and you applied to an international medical school, they will look at that. Yeah. Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you for coming.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I just wanted to unmute because it's easier than typing. But I was interested in going to like abroad just because I guess it saves time and then you don't have to write the MCAT.
Yeah.
But did you say you are like you go to RCSI?
Yes, that's correct. Yes, I do.
And like you did a year of undergrad before applying?
Yes, I did. Okay, so oh, do you have a question first before I go into my whole spiel? Go ahead.
No, you can go. You can go.
Okay. Okay, so RCSI offers a range of programs. They offer physiotherapy, pharmacology, and medicine, which is what I'm in. And I'm assuming you're heading to as well. So they have, again, a range of programs. Within those programs, they have a 4-year program, which is when you have an undergrad and you apply with your undergrad, you do a 4-year program of medical school after. Then you have a 5-year program, which there are requirements to get into that 5-year program, but they'd be like if you like pursue an IB or AP in your high school and you pass with a certain average, you're eligible for the 5-year program, or you have a year of undergrad, you're eligible for the 5-year program. And there's a 6-year program, which is direct entry from high school. Those are the 3 options that you have. So I did the 5-year program.
And then I was looking at the 6-year one.
Mhm.
But is it any like harder? Like, is there, did you decide to okay, wait. Did you know that when you were applying for undergrad about RCSI, like is that why you switched out later, or is it like you made a choice to do a year of undergrad first and then do the 5-year program?
Yes, you're right. Okay, so when I was applying to university, I hadn't heard about many people going internationally, but then I had already applied and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna just stick it out in Canada. And then when I researched about different universities internationally, I found RCSI and my heart was kind of set on that. And then I kind of catered my application process towards schools that I had seen applicants get into RCSI with, meaning. So that's why I went to Queen's, because I saw a lot of people from Queen's had a good, like I guess, like, you know how every, like, for example, McMaster Health Sciences, med schools look and they don't frown upon Mac Health Sci at all. They, in fact, the opposite. They love Mac Health Sci. So like you're almost like I would say a shoe-in for medical school because they like that. The curriculum is good and strong and great. They let you in. Same thing goes for, in my opinion, Queen's. But this is just like a very personal opinion. Like, don't take this and, but it's just what worked for me was that like they seem to have had a good impression of Queen's already because a lot of students that had gone to RCSI are from Queen's, and they didn't struggle with like their like first year. Their marks were strong enough, and like it reflected well in the school. That's why I chose to go to Queen's for my first year, and then from there I applied to the 5-year program.
And did you apply through like Atlantic Bridge? Or
yes. Oh my God, you know what? Yes, I did. I'm sorry.
I've done the UCAT and then I'm like, I have all of my choices for the school, but like I'm a little torn on whether it's worth spending the extra money to go international and like the reasons behind, because I know that if you look ahead, getting into residency after being an international student in Canada is like something that people have been like is really hard, and like it's better to stay in Canada when you can. But
it's true.
I like hearing about the reasons people choose to like go abroad, and I've heard great things about how good the RCSI's like clinical stuff is.
It's amazing. I have only the best things to say. And if you want, I'll put my email in and you can email me anything, or even like we'll do a call, because I have a lot to say, even about like I chose RCSI because I knew about all the misconceptions that were behind like international schools and getting into residency programs. But like I go to this school, and this is not a bias at all, but it kind of is. RCSI has great matching rates with residencies. They match with like fantastic schools all across the world. It's one of the top matching in the world. So internationally speaking, of course. But if you do have any more questions, of course, like please feel free to reach out. I'm gonna put my email in the chat right now if anyone has any questions about this, because I know it comes up.
Yeah, I didn't want to like steal the like
Yeah.
question
No, thank you for
asking.
asking. Thank you for asking.
Thank you so much. That'd be great.
Does anybody else have any other questions? You could put them in the chat or just unmute. I think I answered all of them that were in the chat, but if you want to ask anybody about their experiences, you can always unmute as well. And even if you're interested in traveling abroad based off of that in like a scientific context, because maybe like studying abroad like as an actual school is maybe too big of a step for you, you could always consider like shorter study abroad trips as well to get the international experience without actually going to a school that's abroad. Adam goes to Western. Adam doesn't go to Western. I think he did get into Western, but he chose to go to Windsor to stay at home. Adam, do you want to elaborate on your experience with that?
Yeah, sure. I got into Western medical science. I just chose to stay at Windsor because I thought that the program here had, well, not really the program, but I have a lot of resources here already that I had built up from high school. So it was like more preferable for me to stay at home. And I also got into another program at UWindsor, which is called like the Outstanding Scholars Program, which basically gives us guaranteed exposure to research really early on, which is something that I had wanted to do. And I didn't get into the Scholars Electives program. So that was also another factor on that decision. But I do have some friends that I know who do go to Western in medical science. Yeah, so what medical science, I'm not sure if you talked to some of your friends, but if I remember correctly, they do it in like a couple of rounds of admission. So right now it's still really, really early, right? It's still December. The deadline to apply hasn't even passed yet. So if you're in grade 12 and you're applying now, like you're probably not going to hear back from them until like at least like February, I think. And since that's kind of a competitive program, you'll probably hear back from them after hearing back from other schools. They tend to wait a while before releasing those acceptances. And the way it works is kind of they release it in rounds. So they'll do like first round of admissions. They'll admit like however many people, let's just say like 100. If you don't get in the first round, they'll do like a second round of admissions later where they admit like a second set of like 100 students and then a third round. So even if you know some of your friends got in, I wouldn't be discouraged yet. They do multiple rounds. Like Sona said, she got in January. I think I got in April. I know I wasn't in the first set. I think I was in the second set. But
Me too. I was in the second set also.
yeah. So I would say though, if you have above a 90% average, pretty good chance. Okay, March, same thing. But if you have above a 90%, I would say pretty good chances you're gonna get in. If you have anywhere near like a 95 plus, basically guaranteed you're gonna get in. Yeah, I would not be worried at all.
And I heard it has something to do with like the courses themselves that you take as well. When I did it, it was on like my grade 12 year was online. So it was divided into like quadmesters. So the courses that I had to take in my first quadmester weren't necessarily like prerequisites for the program, but then the ones that I took in my second quadmester were prerequisites. So like my English and bio, I think, or something like that. So after they got those prerequisite marks in, then they looked at that again. So they might just be waiting for your like midterm marks next semester, maybe, or like your updated progress report or something like that. So that tends to be a thing just in case like you don't have all your grade like or like too many of your grade 12 prerequisites in the first semester. So it doesn't have much to do with like you're not good enough or anything, especially if your average is good enough. Just wait, I guess they're probably just looking for more marks to come in or more updated results. So just hang in there.
Yeah, like to be honest with you, it's so early on right now. I wouldn't even bother looking. Like you're not gonna hear back from them for at least another few months, and that's just because they're just waiting for uh, all the applications to come in. Um, yeah, so I would not worry at all. I think one of the worst things you can do is just stress about it, keep on checking every day, every minute. You're just not going to hear back from them for a while. So it's something you have to accept. And then for the thing about Windsor, a lot of people do go to American med schools from Windsor. I'm not sure if they get preference. I think it's just because Windsor is a border city. So we do border the US. From the University of Windsor campus, you can literally see the American border. So it's right on there. Like you can literally see the bridge to cross into the US. So that's why I think a lot of people go to the US from Windsor. Yeah, some people get in December. I don't know about that side though.
If it affects your overall grade average and it's in like your top 6, then unfortunately it will affect your chance of it at getting in, just because the way the way Western works is, for MedSci at least, it's primarily by grade, so just by that. But it's not like it'll eliminate your chances or anything if your overall average is still pretty decent. At our school, we didn't have AP or IB, but we had something called the enriched program, which is again like an upper study sort of thing.
I think, okay, I didn't take IB or AP. I wasn't offered in my school either. But I'd say like just taking those courses, you're not at a huge disadvantage if you don't have IB or AP, because again, they know it's not offered everywhere. And I wouldn't stress too much about not having IB or AP. It doesn't make that much of a difference, trust me.
Even after you get into university, like I know a ton of people here that did AP in high school and like are not doing that good in university, and then a lot of people who didn't do it and are doing good in university. So it's not like there's like a direct correlation between the two by any means.
I agree. You're welcome.
Thank you for coming. And if anybody else has any other questions, we'll hang on for a few more minutes and you could just drop them into the chat.